Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Object Oriented Programming 1. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the basics of programming using Java. We'll get a refresher on programming languages, what are they, what are the types, and what is an interpreter and what is a compiler. Then we'll dig deeper into what is Java, why did we use Java for this course, how can we use Java to write our first program, and then we will look into more detail on how can we use Java and write selection structures using Java, how can we write mathematical functions, and we will conclude this lecture with characters and strings. So first, what is a computer program, or otherwise known as a software? What are they? We have a lot of examples. We use them all the time. We have them on our tablets, mobile phones, computer devices. Examples of it could be WhatsApp, Zoom, Telegram, Microsoft Word. All of these are examples of computer programs. So what are they? What do they do? They are instructions for the computer to execute. They are written using different programming languages. You've already studied two, Python and C++, and in this course you are going to study Java programming language. So in computing, we have three different types of languages. The first language is machine language, which is binary, basically, zeros and ones, and it is the language that is understood by machines, by computers. Machine language is the only language that is understood by machines. They can't understand assembly, they can't understand high-level language, only machine language. So what is assembly language? It is an intermediary language. It is a language that is understood by high or advanced programmers. This is an example. It's a symbolic language. And then we have high-level language. It is the easier English-like programming language that is mostly used by developers. So high-level language, examples of it are all of the languages that you've already studied and Java language. So Python, C++, and Java are all high-level language. If you want to pursue computer science, then you will look into more detail of assembly language. You will study one example of assembly language in computer organization course. So how is high-level language different from assembly? This is a statement written in high-level language. It is easy to read, easy to understand, easy to know what is inside the variable of area. And here's an example of an assembly language. And here's an example of machine code. So assembly language is not understood by machines. So how can we turn the code from assembly language to machine code? It needs an assembler. So assembly code is used by an assembler to turn it into machine code. So what about high-level languages? High-level languages, to be translated from high-level language to machine code, they either go through, so on the top here we have high-level languages, which are all the languages that you've already studied, including visual languages, object-oriented languages, C and C++, Pascal, Fortran, Python. They are translated into assembly language using a compiler or interpreter, and then from assembly language to machine language. Sometimes you can go directly from a high-level language to machine language, but the most common way is from high-level language to assembly language using a compiler or an interpreter, and then from assembly language to machine language using a assembler. So some of the most popular high-level language that you already know, or along with others, are C++, Java, Python, and maybe if you studied it in high school, Visual Basics. So what is Java? Why did we decide to learn Java in this course? So Java is a general purpose computer programming language. It is a high level programming language designed to produce programs that will run on any computer system. Java is one of the most widely used programming languages in the industry, in academia, in many different industries. So Java is one of those platform independent languages. And what we mean by that is you can write it in using one code and it will be translated on multiple different machines. It can be run on multiple different machines without any problems. Some languages are not platform independent, which means that if you write it on a certain device, it can only be ran by another device with the same infrastructure, with the same hardware. If it was on different hardware, it might not be understood. But that's not the case in Java. Also, another advantage of learning Java is it can be used on different types of applications. So it can be used in desktop applications, which are the applications that we have on laptops and PC devices. So for example, these are all desktop applications. It can be used on embedded systems, such as digital cameras, and it can be also used in web applications. So different websites can use it for its backend, and it can also be used on mobile applications on your devices. So for example, we have the language Swift, which is Apple's iOS programming language. It is only a mobile application language. You can't use it for web applications, you can't use it for desktop applications. It is only specifically used for mobile applications. For example, we have PHP. That is a language only for web applications. Java can be used for all four of these. So some of the features of Java are listed here. You can watch this video to look into more detail about these. I will revisit the features of Java as we start learning about how to write our program. But I recommend you watch the video to understand the features of Java. So we have 3 different editions of Java. Since it's a very powerful language and has many different ways to use it, we have 3 different editions. The first edition is the Java Micro Edition, which is used to develop mobile applications and cell phones, and a Java Standard Edition, which is used to develop desktop applications, any standalone applications. We will be using Java Standard Edition in our labs. And the third type is the Java Enterprise Edition, which is used to create server-side applications, large applications that are connected, and they're usually used in the industry. فلغة الجافا بما أنها جدا لغة قوية وتستخدم في عدة مجالات، عندنا 3 أنواع منها أو 3 editions. الإديشن الأول اللي هو جافا مايكرو إديشن هو يستخدم خصيصا للموبايل ابليكيشنز. النوع الثاني الجافا ستاندرد إديشن هو ستاندرد، هو اللي راح نستخدمه في اللابات. والنوع الثالث اللي هو الجافا انتربرايز إديشن، وهذا النوع اللي يستخدم في الشركات بحيث انه يكون للبروجكتات الكبيرة. So in Java, we need to install a Java development kit. What is a Java development kit? A Java development kit consists of separate programs used in command line for developing and testing Java programs. So not all devices have Java installed. So you need the Java development kit to run Java programs. We can also use, in conjunction to Java development kit, an IDE, which is a development environment. So in C++, you've already used the development environment, such as Xcode or Dev++ or Dev C++, I forgot the name. in Java, we will be using NetBeans in our labs. So the Java Development Kit, if we want to run our programs using command line, if we want to run using the IDE, we will still need to install the Java Development Kit, but we will not work directly with it. So for example here, if we run the terminal, not everyone will have Java installed. So when I wrote Java, it gave me the command how I can use Java, which means that I have Java installed. Some devices don't, so you have to install it. And the NetBeans, which is the IDE, this is the NetBeans program that we will be using in our labs to make it easier for us to debug and read our code and compile it. فبالعربي عندنا Java Development Toolkit. هذه التولكت فائدتها لازم نحملها علشان تسمح لنا انه نستخدم جافا، لغة جافا، عشان نسوي compile ورن للبروجرامز حقتنا. فزي ما شفنا قبل شوي في الشاشة السوداء، إذا كتبتي جافا في جهازك ممكن ما يطلع لك إنه جافا موجودة، فهذا معناه إنه لازم تحملين الJDK. أما إذا طلع لك نفسي اللي هو اليوسج وقام يعلمك كيف تستخدمينها، فهذا معناه إنه محمل عندك، you can compile and run Java programs. ال IDE اللي راح نستخدمه أو اللي هو Development Environment هو NetBeans. من هنا راح نسوي run وراح يعطيني first output للبروجرام حقنا. طيب فكيف يشتغل برنامج جافا؟ كيف يسوي لنا run؟ So how can we use Java to compile and run programs? So first we start with the editor, which is the IDE. We write our program, which is written in a source code or source file. The extension of the source file is .java. As we can see here, it is .java. Then the compiler will turn that source code into bytecode that has an extension of .class. So when I click on the run button here, it will create a .class file or a bytecode. And then this bytecode, using an interpreter, this interpreter in Java is called the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine, will turn this file, this bytecode, into machine code that can be ran and understood by our machine. What is this library files? If we use additional files that we haven't written, that we used from an API or other library files, we will also need to turn this bytecode into machine code to be understood and to run our program successfully. So here's another way to show it. So we have Java code, which is our source file, and then we have the Java C compiler. It will turn it into bytecode, which has the .class extension, and then the virtual machine, depending on the operating system, it will give us the machine code, because different operating system deals with binary in different ways. So it will translate the bytecode depending on the operating system to give it the best way to be interpreted. So Linux machines can have binary read in a different way as opposed to Mac or as opposed to Windows. So for example, Mac can be using Unicode, Linux can be using a different format. So that is why we need to know what is the operating system that we're using, and it will translate the bytecode into machine code depending on it. So we'll see here an example. So here we have a Java code. So this is our Java program. You don't need to understand it right now, but this is just to show you that we have a Java program. So here we have our source file. Now we'll use the terminal and we will compile it. The command for compiling a Java program is using the command javac. So we'll write javac, but first I have to go to the directory, desktop, and then Java example. Okay, now I will use javac to compile my code. So now the code has been compiled, I should expect a class file. So we can see here that we have a class file, test1.class. And we can see that it's coffee because that's the meaning of Java, it's a type of coffee. So now that I have a class file, a class file, which is a bytecode, to run this program using the Java virtual machine to interpret it, we will write the command java test1, which is the name, and then it will give me the output. This program simply prints welcome to Java, and it printed it on the command line. So this is how Java compiles and runs programs. So in Arabic بالعربي أول شيء عندنا الإديتور هو البرنامج اللي راح نكتب فيه الكود حقنا. الإديتور راح يكون فيه source file زي ما شفنا هنا. source file هو هذا الفايل اسمه test1.java. هذا test1.java كيف أحوله المشين كود يفهم الكمبيوتر؟ أول شيء لازم أسوي له compile، راح يسوي له compile وراح يحوله إلى .class files. ال IDE بما أنه يحاول يسهل عليك الحياة فهو ما يبين لك هذه الفايلز وين موجودة، لكن هي موجودة .class. فعلشان كذا أنا وريتكم إياها هنا باستخدام الكوماند لاين، وسويناها بنفسنا، استخدمنا الكومبايلر وحول لنا test1.java إلى test1.class. فالكومبايلر حولها باستخدام الكوماند javac اللي هو java compiling، فحولناه إلى class file. بعدين باستخدام الجافا virtual machine سوى interpretation للclass file and the program was run. فلما حولناه باستخدام الجافا virtual machine كان الكوماند فقط إنه نكتب جافا واسم البروجرام اللي هو كان test1، وفي الأخير سوالها run. طيب فهذا هو الإكزامبل اللي كتبناه. A simple Java program, we wrote public class welcome. We will see the meaning of public, and every Java program must have a class, at least one class. So we write public class, and then here's the name of your Java program, which is also the name of your class. And then you open a curly braces. Then you write your main method. Every Java program must have a single main method. And you write it this way. You write public, static, void, main, and then string with the square brackets, args, and then you close the parentheses. We'll see by the end of this course why you write it in this syntax, but for now, just write it the way that it is. And this means that, just to recap, this means that we have a program, we have a Java program that is called welcome.java. When we write the public class with this name, that means this is the name of our project, this is the name of our Java program. So we have to write it as welcome.java. This is the way we do it in Java. And then you write your main method this way, and then this simple program is just to print a statement. The way that we print a statement using Java is by writing system.out.println, which is short for print line, and then we open parenthesis, and with apostrophes we write welcome to Java and end it with a semicolon. So every Java program must have at least one class. Each class has a name, so this class has the name of welcome. By convention, the class name starts with an uppercase letter, and the program is executed from the main method. So it looks for the main method. We can have more methods in the class welcome, but the program execution starts from the main method. So the output will be welcome to Java. So as we can see here, we have the class test1, and as I said, this class, since it includes the main method, this class has to be the same name of the file. So we write it as test1.java, and then public static void main, we write it as it is, which is our main function, and then we write how we print a message in Java, which is writing system.out.println, and then our statement. So it is the same idea as in C++, as in Python, but in Java it has different syntax. We will see why we need classes by week 5 or week 4 maybe. But for now, this is how we write it in Java. So programming styles بس إعادة بالعربي. فطريقة كتابة البروجرام في الجافا، أولا راح نبدأ بكتابة اسم الكلاس. ممكن نبدأها public، ممكن ما نبدأها public، لكن في هذا المثال بداها في public، فنكتب public class، هذه إلزامية، وبعدها نكتب اسم الكلاس. لكل كلاس ممكن يكون له اسم. هذا الكلاس سميناه welcome، والconvention إنه نكتب، أو المعتاد المتعارف عليه إنه نكتب name of the class باستخدام capital letter لأول حرف، بعدين نكملها بسمول letter. فهذا كلاس اسمه welcome. بعدها طريقة كتابة المين ميثود باستخدام الجافا راح نكتب public static void main، بعدين نفتح قوس string أقواس مربعة، بعدين args نسكر القوس، بعدها نفتح curly braces، وبعدين هنا المعلومات اللي داخل المين ميثود. ايش نبغى نسوي هذا البرنامج؟ مجرد طباعة، فراح نكتب هذه statement. هذه طريقة الطباعة باستخدام جافا. راح نكتب system.out.println، هذه طريقة الكتابة. راح نبداها system.out.println، بعدين هنا راح نكتب أي جملة نبغى نكتبها. في هذه الحالة كتبنا welcome to Java، بعدين ما ننسى نختمها بسيمي كولن. فكل جافا بروجرام لازم يكون على الأقل في كلاس واحد. لحد الآن احنا بس راح نتعامل مع كلاس واحد، لكن ما نقدر نبدأ برنامج من دون ما نضيف كلاس. يعني ما نقدر نبدأ برنامجنا بس public static void main function، لازم يكون عندنا كلاس. وراح نشوف الكلاسات الجاية ايش فكرة الكلاس وليش نحتاج كلاس وما إلى ذلك. والبروجرام execution راح يبدأ من المين ميثود، راح يبدأ من هنا. ممكن أن يكون عندي multiple methods، لكن البرنامج راح يبدأ يسوي execute من بداية المين method. So programming styles and documentation, we have to add appropriate comments. For example, if you're working in a group, you're collaborating, you must have appropriate comments so that your colleague, your friend can understand your code better and know why you used the variables that you used, why did you do the calculations that you did. It makes it easier to communicate and to understand each other's codes, even your code after a certain time. Proper indentation and spacing is not good practice to not leave any indentation and spaces, and you should have appropriate indentation and spacing for your program. So for example, if you write your code like this is just, if you wrote your code like this, and then you got these like this, this code will run, it will run correctly, but it is difficult for someone to read. So this is not best practice in indentation and spacing. And also if you leave a lot of spaces, a lot of end lines, that is also not best practice. Naming convention, it is very similar to the C++ naming convention. You should use meaningful names and descriptive names for your variables. At class names, you should capitalize the first letter, and for constants, and in Java we call them final variables, they should be all capitalized, and between multiple words we should have an underscore. So for example, a class name, if it has multiple words, we capitalize the first letter of each word. But if it was a normal variable name, then it will be written using small letters. So for example, if this was the name of a variable, it will be written compute, and then the second letter will be capitalized, the first letter of the second word, camel case. But in classes, the convention is to capitalize the first letter of each word. And in constants, it is to capitalize all letters, and if we have more than one word, we leave an underscore between them. And then we have different block styles. Some people, this is depending on preference. Some people like to use next line style, which means to have the curly braces after one line of the name of, after the end of a statement, such as here. And some people like it using end of line style, such as here. So instead of leaving a line, you have it on the same line. The end of each line, you have your parentheses, or curly braces, sorry. So we have also different types of programming errors. We have syntax errors, we have runtime errors, and we also have logic errors. What are the different types? What are the difference between these three types? A syntax error is a grammatical error that can be easily detected by your compiler. So for example, if you forget your semicolon, that is a syntax error. A different type of error is runtime error, which means it is a type of error that will crash your program. So after you run your program, then for example the user types some input and your program crashes, this is a runtime error. A logic error is a type of error that will not crash your program, and your compiler will not complain about it, but it will give you unwanted results, the results that you do not expect. So for example, if you have this code, it will give you some sort of result, it will give you a mathematical result, but let's say for example you were poor in math, and what you really wanted was to multiply 35 by 5 first. But because you don't know your precedence, you added parentheses here. So this is a logic error, because it will give you a result, it will not give you a syntax error. It is not a runtime error, your program will not crash, it will give you a result, but not the result that you want. So that is a logic error. So we will stop here, and in the next video, we'll continue in elementary programming.